Welcome back. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Mondays through Friday, you hear me on the Salem Radio Network from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern. Saturday mornings, I'm right here on MSNBC. I'm joined this week by James Hohmann of The Washington Post, Anna Palmer of Politico, Hope Speck of Military.com, and Al Weaver of The Washington Examiner. Okay, time for our feature, Most Important Person of the Week, not named Trump. For me, it is Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. The reason is simple. We need one Democrat other than Heidi Heitkamp to step up and say, I'm voting for Mike Pompeo so we can put this silliness behind us. It is just far too important an issue and time for the Democrats to be playing partisan politics with the North Korean initiative. Joe Manchin, step up and get this over with. Let me go to you, Anna Palmer. Who for you is the most important person named Trump?
I definitely think it's Robert Mueller. I mean, clearly all eyes are continuing to focus on where is his investigation going. And by default, obviously, Rudy Giuliani is my #2 pick there. Trump picking him as his lawyer was certainly a wild card this week.
Well, you know, it's been a bad look for law enforcement this week with James Comey's book tour kind of going off the rails and Andrew McCabe, the referral. Mueller doesn't get mixed up in any of this, though. In fact, he remains sort of, I believe, the straightest arrow in the quiver. You agree with that?
Well, it's pretty stunning in a time in politics where there's rarely a void of kind of the back and forth, partisanship and bickering. Robert Mueller, throughout this entire investigation, has stayed silent, and I think has really, because of that, been able to be a figure that is above the fray, that just doesn't kind of punch below his weight here. And I think that that gives him even more standing with the American public, but also with, I think, particularly senators who are concerned about, you know, Trump potentially trying to remove him.
Agreed. I continue to hope the president does nothing with the special counsel. Hope Speck, what do you think is who do you think is the person of the week not named Trump?
Well, I've got sort of an off-Capitol Hill pick. Mine is Tammy Jo Schultz, who piloted Southwest Flight 1380. I think everyone in America has heard the recording of her directing ground control. She brings that flight in, nerves of steel. Turns out that she was one of the Navy's first ever fighter pilots in the 1980s. And she's starting this conversation about the possibilities for women in that field. That's still just 2.4% female in naval fighter aviation.
Yeah, she's quite the hero. I love that you picked her, and I also thought of Martha McSally, who's running for Senate down in Arizona, an A-10 pilot, combat veteran, another one of these extraordinary female aviators that are out there that every time I hear one of their stories, my eyebrows go up and say, we need more of those. Al Weaver, person of the week not named Trump. Who's yours?
Well, I'm going to cheat the rules a little bit and take two. Kevin McCarthy and Nancy Pelosi, two California lawmakers who are both at the top of the caucuses right now, outside of Paul Ryan, obviously, who's going to be stepping down. But they're both leading the caucuses moving forward with a myriad of questions surrounding them. McCarthy, the questions surround, can he get to the 218 if the Republicans hold the House in November? He has a lot of, both him and Pelosi have sharks swarming below them. You have Steve Scalise. You have a couple other Republicans. The Freedom Caucus are really trying, or they're looking into, what they should do on this end. And there's also 7 months between now and then. And then for Pelosi, it's all a matter of will she stay or will she go, and what happens in November. You have Steny Hoyer and you have Joe Crowley down in the Democratic ranks are looking to possibly move up the ladder a little bit, but it all depends if she stays or if she goes. So I'm going to take those two.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jim Jordan is sitting there wondering, I get if my name comes up somewhere. The Ohio congressman expected to challenge McCarthy. McCarthy, the clear front runner at this point. James Hohmann, your person.
I go with Michael Cohen. I think that he is a big question mark. The FBI raid, we're still feeling the reverberations of the president's longtime, not just personal attorney, but consigliere. We found out this week who his other clients were. And there's kind of open public speculation. The lawyer who's worked for Trump for years, who negotiated both of his divorces, Jay Goldberg, told the president in a phone call a week ago that he should be really careful when he talks to Cohen because Cohen could be wearing a wire, that he wouldn't be willing to do hard jail time to protect Trump, and to be careful because he could flip. Cohen is under investigation by the feds, separate and apart from the Mueller probe, for wire fraud, bank fraud, and campaign finance violations. And so he potentially has real legal liability there. He probably knows a lot. What exactly, we can't know. So that's a big question mark, and I think that's something that really is keeping Trump up at night.
Cohen flips, as has been speculated and gossiped. He could say anything and become the key witness against anyone. So, of course, people are going to be awake at night. I want to close this segment by playing one more Trump bit. The president down again with Prime Minister Abiy sort of preemptively strikes out at charges of collusion with this defense.
There has been nobody tougher on Russia than President Donald Trump. Between building up the military, between creating tremendous, vast amounts of oil, we raised billions and billions of dollars extra in NATO. There has been nobody tougher than me.
Nobody tougher than Trump. James Hohmann, does that work?
I think with some of the Fifth Avenue Republicans, I mean, Nikki Haley announced on the Sunday shows that that there were going to be new sanctions. Trump didn't want those; they walked them back, and I think that, you know, hawks feel like Trump could be a lot tougher. So I don't think it works on Capitol Hill. I think it works with the base who doesn't particularly care deeply about this issue.
And Hope, Speck, last word to you. He has raised military spending to $700 billion this year, $720 billion next year. It's a huge defense buildup. Does he have a point here that he's tougher on Russia than President Obama was?
Well, we've seen him expel Russian diplomats. We've seen him impose lines of sanctions. There are things he's done. I was actually very surprised to see this latest round of sanctions announced by Nikki Haley walked back. But he really laid down the gauntlet with his announcement of the Syria strikes the other day, and we haven't seen him take further action. So the ball's really in his court on this one.
When we come back, America will continue talking with my panel, but this time we'll switch to the books that the Beltway ought to be reading after the break. Stay